So a lot has happened in my life, personally and financially, since I last spoke with y'all, and so let's take some time to go over what has happened. In case you're new here, I'm Raymond, a software engineer on the path to financial independence and retiring early, and I've managed to save about $160,000 so far. If you'd like to follow me on my journey, feel free to hit that subscribe button. It really helps out the channel, so thank you so much in advance. Starting off with taking a look at my October budget, things were more or less in line with what I expected, although with a couple of bumps along the way. I didn't actually end up spending nearly as much on eating out as I expected, and I also spent a little bit under some of my other categories. I did spend a little bit more on rent than I expected, mostly as a result of kind of expensive electricity, but it wasn't really by a significant amount. The biggest surprises for me though in October came in the form of income. The first big thing is a third paycheck, which I didn't really expect because I still haven't, really been comfortable with the idea of being a bi-weekly worker instead of a semi-monthly. So I had that additional third paycheck, which I invested immediately. The second big item is something that hasn't shown up really at all since I started recording these videos, and that is rental/supplementary income. In this case, I've decided to add rent on top of that because this is what that is. I'm not going to beat around the bush any further on this, as you may have seen in the title of the video, and if you've been following along in some of my previous videos, my mother is dead. She died in early October, and as a result of her estate planning and so on, the house that she once owned now belongs to me. This makes me, on paper, technically a millionaire, but really doesn't change my finances by a significant amount. I made a longer post about my relationship with fire and money and the prospect of death in my blog, but I'm going to keep this video really at a high level and just talking about the financial impacts of things. I can't really put an exact figure on the house in terms of value, and it's not really that important in the context of fire from a financial perspective. It is nice and very much helpful to know that I have a place to retire to and have a more or less fixed-ish sort of housing expense, but in terms of its overall value, it's going to contribute to my net worth, but not my liquid net worth for the sake of fire unless I decide to sell it off. In the meantime, I am renting this out to extended family, and even though it's below market rates, it's enough to cover the property taxes and then a little bit more on top of that. So moving forward into the month of November and onwards, you're going to see this line item as part of my income, although it's not really something that I worry too much about because after crunching the numbers myself, I'm not really coming out on top too much. Moving on to my November budget proper then at this point, there are two really big line items that I'm worrying for. The first major thing is property taxes. Unfortunately, it is a really weird time to be worrying about property taxes because I was not prepared for this at all, to be honest. And so there's quite a bit of property taxes, especially when I'm considering the fact that I'm also helping out my dad pay his property taxes. And so there's a lot of payments coming my way that are due sometime in the middle of December at the very latest. Even though I do have supplementary rental income now and so on, it isn't quite enough to cover it, especially with my own savings rate, and so I will need to be dipping into my emergency funds a little bit just to make sure that the ends meet. The alternative would have been to reduce my savings rate, but it's also a little bit late for that, especially since those changes to my 401k take a couple of paycheck cycles in order to change. The second big thing though is the fact that I'm celebrating a friend's birthday and treating them to some pretty high-end sushi. $478.79 for two people really is a lot of money to be spending on one meal, but I think that it's going to be worth the experience, especially since I've never tried omakase, let alone a Michelin-starred omakase as of last night. Other than that though, my budget for November is more or less keeping in line with the same things, with my 401k at about $3,000, my HSA at $262.50, my expected paycheck income to be about $3,261.68, and rent money to be about $1,763.50. In terms of spending outside of that really expensive sushi meal, everything else is also still in line with my rent and utilities and insurance at about $1,700, my transit at $96, my groceries at $400, and some miscellaneous spending money at $100. This is reduced because of that expensive omakase. I do have some additional savings goals now, primarily for property taxes as well as income tax on the rental income, so that I have the money in the future to actually pay those amounts without having to dip into my emergency savings. Finally, let's take a look at my new net worth as of the beginning of November. I know that post-election things have been really interesting for the stock market, but we're going to be sticking to numbers as of the market close on November 1st, 2024. Starting off with my Roth IRA, it was valued at $33,037.90. For my 401k, which I've been contributing the max, and then through the Mega Backdoor Roth, my after-tax contributions have been going into there as well. I have $50,287.27 inside my 401k. My core account, which serves as my checking, savings, and investment account inside of Fidelity, has $83,960.58. And my HSA has $8,518.86. In total, that puts my liquid assets at $175,804.61. Unfortunately, I still also do have student loans as well as some other debt. Starting off with my student loans, I still have $3,385.41 to pay off at a 2.5% interest rate. In terms of my hospital bills, I have $2,341.22 of hospital bills left to pay, although they don't charge interest on this. In total, that means that I owe $5,726.63 across all of my accounts. As of the beginning of November then, my total liquid net worth is $170,077.98, which is an increase of $8,668.14 from September. To be honest, I'm still not sure if I've fully processed both personally and financially the loss of my mother. There is still a decent amount of things to get through, and thankfully the worst of it is now over, but there's still work to be done. But in any case, I hope y'all enjoyed the update, and I'll see you all in the next video.